About Shavuos, we're coming up on Shavuos. I want to talk a little bit about Shavuos, and then tomorrow we're going to continue with the Parsha. But I want to show you a couple of very important ideas here that come straight out of the Gemara. So first of all, there is a minhag. We spoke about the minhag on Shavuos to eat cheesecake. It's not a minhag to eat cheesecake. It's a minhag to have a milchik meal. And therefore, there are those who their way of doing it is cheesecake. I have ice cream, personally. So, just telling you. But we splurge on, they have these expensive ice cream bars, the real fancy ones that cost 12 shekels each or something, That's my milchiks on Shavuos.
Do we know what they ate that was milchik back then?
We don't know what they ate, but we know that there are several reasons for the milchiks. One is that apparently Bnei Israel ate milchiks at Har Sinai. That's one reason. The other is because Har Sinai was called Har Gavnunim. Now, Gavnunim really means different colors, but it's related to the word Gvina, which is cheese. And so that's where the minute comes from. Frankly, I think it's because people like cheesecake. That's just okay. Now we can cheesecake out. But
I heard another thing.
what's
that they just received the laws of shafting and everything, and by the time they would prepare everything,
that's why they ate milchiks. That's why they ate milchiks at Har Sinai, because they didn't know the shechita how to shecht. Okay, whatever it is, there's a little more to Shavuos than that. Okay, that's what I want to. Okay, I want to read you two Gemaras here. Okay, the two Gemaras which are fundamentals in Yiddishkeit, but they apply to the Shavuos. The first one is the Gemara in Psachim and Daf Samech Ches Amud Beis, 68b, if anybody wants to write it down. Now here, there's a discussion, a machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua. In the Gemara, what do you do on Yontif? We have 3 Yontifs during the year, besides Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which are a little less festive because we're so focused on davening and getting judged and hoping for a good accounting. But you have Shavuos, you have Sukkot, and you have Pesach. So Gemara says, what do you do on Yontif? So Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Ein lo la'ada b'Yontif ela o ochel v'shosa o yoshev v'shoneh. A person on Yontif, either you eat and drink, spend the days eating and drinking, or you spend the day sitting and learning. Either you're in the base medrash or you're in the dining room. Those are your choices on Yontif, right? And you can do whichever one you want. That's what Rabbi Eliezer says. How do you like celebrate? You like celebrating with food? All those in favor say aye, right? Or do you like celebrating by sitting in the base medrash and learning about Eidim Zobamim? All those in favor say aye. Yeah, I didn't think so. So so that's what Rabbi Eliezer says. Rabbi Yehoshua Omer, I got a better idea. Compromise. Chalkeu. Divide it up. Chetzio la'achila v'shasiyah. Half the day is for eating and drinking. V'chetzio l'beis hamedrash. And half the day you got to learn. Okay, that's generally what we do. That's generally what we do is, you have you go to shul, you daven, then you come home, you have a suda, then you take a nap, then you get up. What do you do when you get up from your nap? So some people just eat some more. Get up from your nap and go to the beis medrash and learn. Make the day, meruchni. Okay. Now, both of them agree that on Atzeres, everybody agrees, Atzeres, which is Shavuos, everybody agrees at least half the day. In other words, on Pesach and on Sukkot, you could do what you want all day. On Shavuos, everybody agrees at least half the day has to be spent doing what, gentlemen? Learning Torah. Obviously, not. Everybody agrees that on Shavuos, you have to spend half the day eating and drinking. Chetzio not learning Torah. Half the day, in other words, what the Gemara calls for learning is called lahashem. And eating and drinking is called lachem, for you. And on Shavuos, everybody agrees that on Atzeres, everybody agrees you also need to, part of the time is going to be, now you would say LaHashem, right? Says the Gemara, Lachem. Interesting. Not what we would have thought. And then the Gemara says even a more puzzling say, my time, what's the reason? Yom Shenit Nebo Torah, because that's the day the Torah was given. Well, quite the contrary. Yeah, well, if that's the day the Torah was given, we should be spending half the day learning Torah. So how does the Gemara asks, the Gemara makes a statement and then backs up the statement with something which is exactly the opposite of what you would have thought, typical Gemara fashion. Okay, why is that? The answer is that we have to understand what the nature of Torah is. What's the nature of Torah? So to answer that, we'll take a look at the Gemara in Shabbos. Then we're going to come back to this Gemara over here in what do you call it? In Pesachim. Now the Gemara in Shabbos is on Pei Ches Amud Aleph, 88a. This is a famous Gemara that you've all learned. The Gemara says, on the pasuk, the Torah says in Shmos, "Vayisyatsu betachti sahar." The Jewish people, they when they went to receive the Torah, they were at the base of the mountain. They stood at the base of the mountain. And the Gemara says on that, Amar Rav Avdimi bar Chama bar Chasa, that's his name, Melamed, this teaches, famous lines, famous idea that you've all heard, Shekafa HaKadosh Baruch Hu aleim es ahar kegigis. Hashem held the mountain over the Jewish people like a barrel. Ve'amar lahem, he said the following, Im atem mekablim es Torah, if you mekabel the Torah, mutav, very good. Ve'im lav, if not, sham teik v'rasem, that's where you're going to be buried. Now, what does that mean? Jewish people have a mountain held over them. And Hashem is saying, do you want the Torah? You want the Torah? Gentlemen, look up. If this is, the Jewish people understand, they saw something that no one in history has ever seen. They have these guys, what I told you, these guys, they call it extreme sports. They call it extreme sports, right? What we call extreme stupidity. They call extreme sports. So there are people who climb mountains. Everest, K2, and they do, rock climbing with no ropes and no safety nets, all sorts of really fun things, what they call extreme sports. I mean, I play chess and eat corn chips at the same time. Now that's pretty extreme, but that's about as dangerous as it gets. These guys do things that are, stuff like that. Now, no mountain climber in history, no matter how high they've gotten, they never saw what the Jewish people saw. The Jewish people saw the underside of a mountain. No one's ever seen that before. Now look up. That's the underside of a mountain, gentlemen. We are now have a mountain dangling over our head. Now what would your reaction be if Hashem said, you want the Torah? And we're looking up at a mountain dangling over our head. My reaction, I am so Torah. My favorite, Torah. Torah and bowling. That's just give me more Torah. The mountain is a whole other question for a second. We're looking up at the underside of a mountain. Okay. So the plain meaning of the Gemara is clearly, and the Maharal says that the Gemara does not mean literally that they were threatened by a mountain. It means that the choice to receive the Torah was so obvious that it'd be the equivalent of somebody who's looking up and sees a mountain and somebody saying to him, you want the Torah or do you want to die? So that's how obvious the choice was. But okay, let's go with the words of the Gemara, the way the Gemara sounds. Now, there are two problems with this Gemara. Number one, let's take the second problem first. Hashem said, if you accept the Torah, very good. V'im lav, if not, sham teik v'rasam. That's where you're going to be buried. Now, if you drop a mountain, how do you say here in Hebrew? Kan or po, right? What does sham mean? There. So Hashem says, if not, if you don't accept the Torah, sham teik v'rasam. You'll be buried there. I mean, honestly, if I was writing the Gemara and I wanted to threaten somebody, I said, if you don't accept the Torah, you're going to be, if you drop a mountain on somebody, are they sham or they're po? They're very po, boy. They are very, very po. You are as po gets. Right? Yeah. Po take for us. I'm right here, boys. Right? It's not like, sham, because they're going to go splat and somebody's going to go over there. No. Po, you're going to be buried. So why does the Gemara say sham? Question number one. What's that?
Future tense?
Sham is present tense.
Oh, that? No.
Here, there are the same tense. But you're on the right track. Okay, 1 second. That's the first question. That's the second question. The first question is a bigger question. And that is, I think we've mentioned this before, if your brother came running into the house in a cold sweat, or your sister more likely, comes running into the house and she's breathing hard in a cold sweat, like that, and I said, what's wrong? She says, I was outside and I saw a cat, and to me the cat was like a tiger. So I understand that she's telling you an analogy because she wants to let you know how afraid she is of cats. To her, a cat seemed like a tiger. But if your sister would run into the house and you say, what's wrong? She goes, I saw a tiger outside. And to me, it seemed like a cat. So then that would only be confirming what you've always thought about your sister. right? That something up there's loose, right? Why, if I saw a tiger outside, I would say, I'd say, I was outside, I saw a tiger, and it looked like a tiger. I wouldn't tell you that it looked like, if I saw a cat, well, I'd also say to you, it looked like a cat. All right, but that's kind of a chicken. But if I saw a cat and I wanted to emphasize it, so I would upgrade, I wouldn't downgrade. Downgrading in an analogy makes no sense. You follow? Okay. I think I told you, the last time I went on a teal with Ohr Somayach was 30 years ago, for good reason. And we went to Ein Gedi. And when we got to the path, as soon as we got onto the path, there was this hiking path, and I see a sign that says, "Beware of bobcats." And I remember thinking to myself, what am I supposed to do with this information? Like, why are they telling me this? Like, if I see what if a bobcat comes towards me? Why am I supposed to say, "Hey, Bob, don't mess, I'm aware of you." yeah. Why are you? Unless they were simply telling me that at any point here on this hike, get ready to say your final Kriya Shema, because you're about to go. So I'm not sure exactly why they were telling me that. If I saw a tiger outside, I would come in and I would say, "Hey, I saw a tiger," and to me it seemed like a tiger. Now, if somebody's holding a mountain over you, what would you say? Oh, if I saw a mountain, I say, "Whoa, a mountain," and it looks like a mountain. That's pretty threatening. If somebody was holding a basket over me and I was scared of baskets, I might say, "He held the basket over the Jewish people like a mountain." You know how scared I was of that basket? To me, it was like a mountain. The last thing that I would say is, "Kafa aleim es ahar kegigis." Hashem held a mountain over them like a barrel. He held a mountain over like a mountain. Why? It's a mountain. Big deal. It's a barrel. That makes no sense. Correct? You hear the problem of the Gemara. Okay. So, the plain meaning again of the Gemara, there's always an agadata, there's the plain meaning. But at a deeper level, what the Gemara is saying is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling people the nature of Torah. He was telling the Jewish people the nature of the Torah. If you take a barrel and it's inverted, and I lower a barrel down over you, what would happen? You'd be trapped inside the barrel, right? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu was holding the mountain over the Jewish people. The mountain was hollowed out like an inverted barrel. And he was saying to the Jewish people, if you accept this mountain when I lower it down over you, if you accept it, mutav, it's the best thing you could do. If not, sham teik v'rasa. What does that mean? Anybody who's experienced anything in Torah life, we all know that in Torah life, there are rules, regulations, restrictions, and it's, very demanding. If you lower a mountain down over somebody, what would happen? You're trapped inside the mountain, right? You can't get out. The mountain's hollowed out, and you're trapped inside the walls of the mountain. On the other hand, you can't get out, but nothing else could penetrate in. Nothing could get through the walls of the mountain to get to you. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying to the Jewish people, listen, I'm going to give you the Torah. The Torah is like being inside a hollowed out mountain. And you've got rules, regulations, you've got obligations, and it's demanding. On the other hand, you're being protected from what's out there in the non-Torah world. From the vulgarity, the lack of rules, regulations, the lack of any sort of structure, all the hefkeras in that world, you're protected from it. So I'm telling you, if you accept the Torah, mutav, that's the best thing you could do for yourself to live in this world. Im lav, you don't want the Torah, you don't want to be in the mountain, sham teik v'raschem, that world out there will bury you. The world out there will bury you. In this world, it'll bury you. We're not even talking about the reward in the world to come. The nature of Torah is like a hollowed out mountain. We've got these, it's kind of narrow. You can't eat this, and you can't think this, and you can't do this, and you can't look at this, and you can't. On the other hand, we're protected from all the things that everybody else can do and do. Now you got to make a choice. Which one do you want? Do you want the mountain inside the mountain? Or you want to really go out there? What, it's such a beautiful world out there? Just wonderful, just wonderful. with the liberals and the what do you call it and all the things that we never thought of in the past, that all of a sudden is all anything decent, anything indecent is considered good, and anything decent is considered indecent. That's the way the world works today. Do you know the Gemara in the curses in Vayikra, in Dvarim, it says later on in history, you're going to be considered a madman. Those who are decent are going to be considered a madman. You know, we're phobic about this, that, and the other. If you don't do weed, because it's legal, it's like, what's wrong with you? You're weird, right? Because we legalized it. So if they would legalize heroin, so we'd also be legal if they would make a law that you have to drive drunk, and we don't. So then we're the outlaws over here. You understand? The world's mad, and they look at us like we're Meshuggah. And that's what the Torah says. One day, those who are decent are going to be considered Meshuggah. So the Torah is here. What the Torah here is telling you is what's the nature of Torah? What happened at Har Sinai? What were they accepting? The biggest, we've said this many times, the biggest mistake that people make when they look in from the outside at the religious world, they think that what they call Haredis, those black-hatted, black-suited clones, what they think is that we've made some sort of deal with God, that we will forfeit and sacrifice all the pleasures of this world for some sort of abstract, undefined spiritual reward in the world to come. And nothing could be further from the truth. Because the frum people, have the best life in this world. It's a life with purpose. It's a life with a little bit of discipline. It's a life with rules. And that, ironically, adds to the pleasure of this world. And then there's a reward waiting for a person in the world to come. So over here, the Gemara in Shabbos is saying that the Torah is telling you what's contained in Torah. And that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu holds the mountain over. The analogy is not a downgrade. He's telling you what that mountain was. That mountain was like an inverted barrel. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling you that this is what Torah is all about. And that's why it's Shom Teik Vuraschem. That world will bury you. You know where we find this in history? Where we find it later on in history? When the Jewish people at the time of the Hanukkah, Purim. So what happened? They decided to go join that world. Mordechai said, don't go to the feast of Achashverosh. Don't go to the party, the 180-day party. 180 days, half a year party. I mean, it doesn't quite match up to 4 years in college, but it was one of the biggest parties in history. I knew a guy, had a Talmud, he told me he had a friend in Colorado University who didn't even want to he didn't want to leave after 4 years because he was making so much money selling weed that was better than any other parnasa he would have gotten. He said he used to come in with a guitar case full of weed, selling it on the campus. It's a good parnasa, don't knock it. Okay, so he had a 180-day party of Achashverosh. What happened? The Jewish people, Mordechai said, don't go. No, the king said, we have to go, this, that, don't go. So they joined the party. And what happened as a result of going out to that world? There was a decree of Haman that world will now bury you. There's a decree of annihilation against the Jewish people. Exactly what the Gemara is saying in Shabbos. Exactly what the Gemara is saying. Okay, step one. Step two, Rav Yosef said, when Rav Yosef got to Shavuos, famous Rav Yosef who we've had in the Gemara, so Rav Yosef said, where is it? Yeah. Rav Yosef on Shavuos, he would say, Avdi li igla tilsa. I want you to make me a 3-year-old calf. Shecht and make a 3-year-old calf. The 3-year-old calf is apparently the best meat. And Rav Yosef said, on Shavuos, I want you to make me a good thick steak. Probably had the cheesecake at the first meal. Then he had a nice thick steak on Shavuos. That means I'm going to really celebrate this one. Why? He said, Amar Avdi Le'egla Tilsa. He explained why he wants that. Ilo hayoma de kagarim. If not for this day, kama Yosef ika b'shuka. How many Yosefs there are out there in the marketplace? And what did Rav Yosef mean by that? Because of this day, the day the Torah was given, I'm celebrating because look at all the other Yosefs out in the marketplace. Look at all the other Yosefs out there. So what did Rav Yosef mean by that? So listen to the golden words of Rashi. He meant, Shelamadati Torah, I learned Torah. V'nisro mamti, Torah elevated me. Harei anashim harbe bashuk shemron Yosef. There's a lot of guys out there named Yosef. Uma beini levenam. What difference would there be between me and them? What's the difference between me and them, says Rav Yosef? He became the Rosh Yeshiva, by the way. Rav Yosef at the end of life became the Rosh Yeshiva. He was known as, Rav Yosef himself, his nickname was, he was referred to as Sinai. He was the consummate encyclopedic scholar, as opposed to Rabbi, who was his contemporary, who was the penetrating analysis. Rav Yosef was the Rav Chaim Kanievsky of his day. He just knew everything. He was encyclopedic. So Rav Yosef says, not for Torah? A lot of guys out there named Yosef. So what's the difference between me and them? The difference is I've learned Torah. That's why I became Rav Yosef. There's no haughtiness over here. Rav Yosef is calling a spade a spade. So what was it he's celebrating? He's celebrating what Torah has done for him, and therefore he wants to celebrate it properly in the most physical way possible. There's nothing more physical than meat. Nothing more physical than meat. Meat is, that's why the red cow, also you burn the ashes of the red cow to purify somebody who came in contact with a dead body, because the dead body is pure physicality. There's no neshama there. So how do you purify meat? Take a red cow, a cow, meat, beef. It's more physical than anything else, certainly sushi, right? It doesn't say burn sushi and sprinkle it on the guy who became tameh. You should probably burn sushi anyway, but not eat it. But it doesn't say it's a physical. So Rav Yosef wants to celebrate Shavuos, physical celebration in the most physical way. A good thick steak. Get into that, yeah, Jack? That'd be good. Yeah, a nice igla tilsa for Shavuos. So when you order your meal, get me an igla tilsa. Right? A nice thing. What's going on here? Now listen carefully. What did Rabbi Yosef mean that all those other guys out there would be called Yosef? So I heard a profound explanation. Rav Weinbach Zatzal, one of the Rosh Yeshiva, we're here at Ohr Somayach. He said, when Rav Yosef said, how many Yosefs there are out there? You know, the name Yosef in English is Joe. Right? Rav Yosef would say, I'd be just another Joe. but because I learned Torah, I was Rav Yosef. You know what he was really saying? He was talking about himself. He was saying, if not for Torah, that gave me grounding, stability, a purpose, a direction, a discipline, how many Yosefs would be out there? Yosef, would be out there all over the place. I'd be a fragmented personality. One day I'd be into this narishkeit, one day I'd be into money, and the next day I'd be into my entertainment, and the next day I'd be into gambling, and the next day I'd be into drugs, and the next day, all the wonderful things the world has to offer. What stopped Rav Yosef from doing that? It's only Torah, and therefore he's celebrating Torah. I knew a guy named, ironically, the guy's name was Yosef. At 50 years old, he was a lawyer billing at $600 an hour. All right, it wasn't all his. Some of it went to the company, to the firm. He was billing at $600 an hour, $600 an hour. That's more than rabbis make at Ohr Somayach, by the way. I don't know if you're aware of that. All the rabbis combined in the course of a year. So he's billing at $600 an hour, and that wasn't his main parnasa. His main parnasa was real estate. He was rich out of his gills. And his son told me, I met his son told me that when he hit 50 years old, he was bored with life. Kids were out of the house. He was absolutely bored. He's making all this money. He doesn't know what to do with it. So his wife suggested that in order to occupy his time, he should take a trip. He should make a trip to Bolivia. That'll be a good way to spend your time. Go to Bolivia. And you know as well as I do that you would never heard of or certainly know where Bolivia is unless you played Risk, right? You know as well as I do. The only reason we've even heard of the place is because we played Risk, which, by the way, I'm a demon at Risk. But will it take you all on? But as long as I get Australia. But the what do you call it? She said, go take a trip to Bolivia. That's exactly what Rav Yosef is saying. If not for Torah, where would he end up? I'd be out there. I'd be in Bolivia. He's a fragmented personality. That's number one. Number two, listen to the words of Rashi. Okay, now listen, you guys have learned enough Gemara now that you know that every word of Rashi, where's Binny? Binny, right, we got to figure out what Rashi is saying, right? Exactly, like Rashi could be read in several ways. Every word of Rashi here means something. So listen to the words of Rashi again. He said, if not for the fact that I learned Torah, there are a lot of guys out there named Yosef. What difference would there be between me and them? Well, gentlemen, the Gemara says Rav Yosef was blind. Yosef was blind, which is one of the reasons why he had encyclopedic knowledge. Because when you're blind, you got to memorize it and retain it. And there's a certain urgency, and probably you have an edge on everybody else, just like they say blind people hear better. Rabbi Sinclair told me he was once in the recording studio, and somebody dropped a needle. And people were looking for it. Stevie Wonder was there. And Stevie Wonder walked right across the room, bent down, and picked it up. That's what Rabbi Sinclair told me. Because apparently he heard the ding when the needle hit the ground, and the hearing was so precise that he walked over and told it. That's what he said. I personally didn't like his music, but he was good at needles. So the what do you call it? The Rav Yosef is blind. Now listen to what Rashi says. Rav Yosef said, if not for Torah, there are a lot of guys out there. What difference would there be between me and them? Gentlemen, if a blind man walked into the room, what's the first thing you would notice? You would notice that there's probably no greater difference between two human beings than a person who could see and a person who's blind. Right? There's no difference. I mean, of all the handicaps that a person wouldn't want, chas v'shalom, is to be blind. So Rav Yosef says, what difference is there between you and everybody else, Rav Yosef? Well, they can see and you can't see. That's a pretty big difference. Rav Yosef is saying, you're right, that's a difference that's this big. But the difference between a man who's learned Torah and a man who hasn't learned Torah is even bigger than the difference between a man who can physically see and a man who can't. How do you like that? That's a bigger difference. It's a difference in behavior, and it's a difference in how his head works and how his mind works. A man who's learned Torah, it's a completely different behavior. You look at how, look around at older Talmidei Chacham, and look at the Rav Samets of the world, and the Rav Moshe Feinstein's of the world, and Rav Chaim Kanievsky's of the world. You can't compare them to a regular human being. The Chazon Ish says a Talmid Chacham walks around. The Chazon Ish says a Talmid Chacham looks like a human being, but he's really an angel among men. It's a completely different outlook, a completely different head. You've learned enough Gemara to know you learn Gemara for about 40, 50, or 60 years, your head works differently. You've got a different outlook. Sure, you could see physically, but he could see, the story of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says. You've heard of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, right? Rav Shlomo was one of the Gedolei Ador. So there was a guy, came to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, before he came to Rav Shlomo. He was an older guy, and he wasn't married. And he was no prize, and he was socially awkward, and he was getting a little older, and he wanted to get married and start shidduchim. He was on shidduchim, but he had an older mother, and he made a precondition: any girl that marries him has to be willing to allow his mother to live with them. Now, if you want to know what serious pain is, it's a younger couple that allows the couple gets married and the wife's mother lives with them. That's pain. So his friend said to him, Zalman, listen, you're no prize yourself. And to make a precondition like that, you're really shooting yourself that this is just not going to work. Now he said, no, I have to. They said, you got to institutionalize your mother. You can't have your mother living with you. He said, no, I need a girl with a golden heart who's going to allow my mother to live with us. They said, Zalman, it's not going to work. They started arguing. He said, you know what? Do us a favor. Go speak to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. He wasn't a Gadol Dor. He was Rav Chaim. He was Rav Elyashi's Mechutin. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and Rav Elyashiv were the two Gedolei Ador after Rav Moshe Feinstein was nifter. So he said, go speak to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. So he said, okay, I will. And he went to Rav Shlomo Zalman and he said to Rav Shlomo Zalman, this is my precondition. My friends are telling me it doesn't kind of work. What should I do? Shlomo Zalman says, you should stick with your condition. You should find a girl with a golden heart who is willing to have your mother live with you, and I give you a bracha that you should find her soon. The very next girl he goes out with, sure enough, they go out and they get engaged, and the girl accepts the condition, and it's wonderful. And he comes back to Shlomo Zalman, he says, Rebbe, your bracha worked, I found a girl, she's a golden heart, she's willing to let my mother live with us, and Shlomo Zalman says, Mazel tov, now institutionalize your mother. Because what? He said, put your mother in an institution. You can't have your mother live with you when you get married. He said, yeah, but Rabbi, you told me. I said, I know exactly what I told you. I told you to find a girl with a golden heart who's willing to have your mother live with you. Now you found that girl, and now you can't blame her. You could blame me because I'm telling you that you can't have your mother live with you, you nutcase, when you first get married. Now put your mother in an institution. That's a person with Torah vision. You understand what a Reb Shlomo Zalman Baruch is? Everybody goes with no, no, no. He said yes, 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 because he had a plan. That's what Torah does to a person. That's what Shavuos is about. Shavuos is about not only, by the way, this whole idea of staying up at night, staying up all night and learning at least part of the night. You know, it's a wonderful thing if you can handle it. It's a wonderful thing if you can handle it. You just got to remember that you got a davening at the end of it. You got a long davening. It's a long davening Shavuos. And there's Megillas Rus, and there's what do you call it? So it's a bit of a, you know. I personally do not stay up all night. I don't stay up all night. I found that I don't gain my. It's a good thing to do if you've never done it. Just the geschmack, the energy and stuff. What I do on those rare occasions where I have stayed up all night is I've gone to sleep. I stay up until 4 o'clock when it's already Olos Shachar. Then I go to sleep for about 4 hours, and I get up at 8 or 8:30 and go to shul. So I could daven like a mensch. To daven at the end of the night is very, very difficult. Okay, you guys go to the Kaisel, I think, so you're energized anyway, and you've had a lot of coke at night. You know, that's what cola, the liquid, and that'll keep you going to, that should keep you going. And it's a good thing to do. But I found that I learned till about 1 o'clock at night, and at 1 o'clock in the morning, my mind, once my head turns off and I'm just like looking at words like that, I may go to sleep, and I made a calculation, I end up getting more learning in over the course of Shavuos. I get up in the morning, I've learned before davening, and after davening, it's a different, but if you've never done it, it's a good thing to do. But what you should really be thinking about on Shavuos, and when you're davening, what you're really thinking about is, you ended up here. A lot of guys didn't end up here. You ended up here for whatever the path was that brought all of us here. We ended up here. So we have a debt of gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We have to be thankful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's given us something that most people in the world don't have. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us himself, Im tekablena mutav. This is the best way to live. And so Shavuos should be a day of gratitude. It's a day where you should be thanking God. Hey, thank you very much for bringing me here. Thank you very much for bringing. I don't mean to Ohr Somayach. I mean bringing me to this lifestyle, which I either did not know about or I knew about and didn't get into it, and now I'm into it. And a person has to know that you have a very extreme debt of gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You have an opportunity, by the way, 3 times a day we daven. Every time you say modim. Modim anach, right? We better modim anach. We thank you, Rabbi Shalom. But stop for a second. When you say modim, stop for a second. Say thank you for everything. Don't say it. Think all the things you have to say, be thankful for. But one of the things to be thankful for, is Shavuos. That's the long and short of it. So tomorrow we're going to go back to the Parsha here. But I just wanted you to know this about Shavuos, what it is that Shavuos is about. All right. Okay.